And so to walk you through past 50 some years, let me, without further ado, invite our own Isaiah Allen to give us some history lesson today. Welcome, Isaiah. Thank you.
Good morning. Good to see a lot of young people here today because they get a chance to learn something that I really don't think that they know about this church. First, giving honor to God and the Father and for having me here. Just going to talk about a little history of the church, and later on this morning you will be handed a pamphlet that kind of summarizes the history and some of the features of the church. So I will go from there. The original church building was constructed in 1929. On its cornerstone, it read St. Mary's Hall. It didn't say St. Mary the Purification Hall. It said St. Mary's Hall. And why I say this, the stone is buried on the ground right near the school entrance underneath the canopy. It was church building at that time was a hall. It was built in 1929 with a future church to be built, shown on some drawings, to be built right here where we sit today. So the church was meant to be here back in 1929. In 1999, the building, as we knew it as the church building, which was the St. Mary's Parish Hall, and part of the school was demolished to make room for this church complex as we know it today. The building was officially opened February 2nd, 2000. As I mentioned, you'll be given a pamphlet today to further summarize this history of the church. In that pamphlet, a few features such as the ambo from which I stand, the altar to my left, the baptismal pool out in a gathering space will all be talked about in that pamphlet, and the crucifix and the meaning of the crucifix, which could be interpreted many ways, but one of the meanings is listed in that pamphlet. Today I will also point out to you several features around the church building, because we are the church. Let's remember that. We are the church. This is a church building of worship. As I speak, I would like your mind to focus on the use of natural light, the use of sacred geometry, the use of Afro-centricity, and the meaning why. Sacred geometry and the meaning of intersecting circles throughout our complex will be mentioned in my descriptions. The pamphlet also goes into more detail about describing the meaning of the intersecting circles. Faceted glass windows. We have two faceted glass windows in the church right now as I stand. One is above us, above the stone wall. If you can see that faceted glass window, who knows the song, He's Got the Whole World in His Hands? Do you see the hands of God? Do you see the whole world around Him? Do you see the earth tones? Do you see the doves flying? Do you see the water, cleansing water flowing through His hands? At a certain time in the morning, with all the lights out in this church, and if that sun is bright and rising in the east, there's a section in this church where you will be bathed in a calliope of beautiful lights and rays from the sun through God's hands. To the west, our namesake, St. Mary of the Purification. If you look behind you, just look behind you at that faceted glass. I have a little laser pointer. See, that's St. Mary the Purification with the doves around her. At nighttime, when the lights are lit, it flows and people can see it from the street as they drive by. But that's two features in the church I wanted to point out to you about the faceted glass in the church. Notice the adinkra, the kente design around the glass also, which is Afro-centric. 3 stained glass windows on the roof. Look above you. You see the stained glass. This stained glass, as I see it here, tells the Old Testament. It summarizes the Old Testament. I don't know about this laser pointer I got here, how good it is. But if you see from the bottom working up to the top, you'll see God's hands at the bottom. That's the creation. Abraham and the ram. The 10 Commandments. See the two tablets in the middle. The loaves, the meaning of manna and wheat in the Old Testament. And David, King David, and the harp. That summarizes the Old Testament. The New Testament, starting from the bottom, you can see the manger scene. Then you see Christ taking up his staff for instruction and teaching. It summarizes all of his miracles with the bread and the fishes in the middle. There's the crucifixion glass, and at the top, there's the resurrection, the rollaway stone in front of the tomb. In the middle, as we talk about the history of the church, at the bottom is the shield for the diocese. St. Mary's Hall, church building as we know it, is the next glass. If you recognize that symbol in that church, that's it, is the second one. The third one in the middle is the S.V.D. symbol, their crest. If you went to St. Mary's School or you're familiar with St. Mary's School, you'll see We Are Family. That's the St. Mary's School emblem. And at the top is the shape of the church building as we know it today. So that's, if you're looking up now, you get an idea of what you could be looking at. The ambry. The ambry is a recess or a closet where holy oils are kept. When you first enter into by the baptismal font, I don't know if you noticed, on the wall, there's a recess covered in marble, encased in marble. That marble came from the altar of the old church. If those who remember the old church, remember we had an altar. This was a request from Bishop Fiorenza. He wanted to have a part of where the holy oils were kept in the church. So when you see that, you'll know that that came from the old church. Bishop Fiorenza also left us a mark, several marks, but one is very visible. As Mr. Cashin is standing back there against the wall, about 3 feet to his right is a dark cross on the wall. That's a remnant of that thick oil of consecration that Bishop Fiorenza blessed the church with and consecrated the church with back in February 2nd, 2000. He did it all the way around, but that one just seems to stay there. I've been watching it for 20 years, and that cross is still there. Now, you have to see it, but it's a dark cross that's embedded into the brick back there. So that really lets us know this church was really consecrated with some thick oil. The tabernacle from the old church. The tabernacle came from the old church, and this is it here. The tabernacle is in a circle, but first in that circle, you'll see to his right behind the decoration, the black, red, and green decoration, there's a tablet that's indicative of the rollaway stone from across the tomb. So when you notice that again, you'll see it's kind of sticking out, peeking out there, but it's more visible if the decoration is moved. I wanted to point that out. That's a rollaway stone feature. The wall, the white stone on the wall, not just white stone from Texas. That's limestone from the Holy Land of Israel. So to let you know that it's sacred geometry, sacred building materials were attempted to be used throughout the church. That white stone is from Israel. The tabernacle sits on 12 stanchions. Now, who knows that Christ had 12 disciples? So if you look at the tabernacle and look at the table, you'll see 12 stanchions, 12 supports, indicative of the 12 apostles to carry out Christ's missions. For duality of service, the tabernacle serves both the chapel and the sanctuary. Why? It's because it's on a rotating base. Some people call it lazy Susan. No. It's a rotating base. You remember I spoke about sacred geometry and the use of circles, 360 degrees. Christ is serving us in 360 degrees. He's also in a circle. See, the tabernacle is in a circle, 360 degrees. Recall that Christ is going to cover us 360 degrees infinitesimally. So if you can picture that, just all circles everywhere, all degrees, that's Christ's coverage for us. Again, he has the whole world in his hands. The round communal shape of the church. As you sit in the church building, you see the round communal shape. That's evidence in the form of an African hut. On the pamphlet, I hope you can see the front, or if you come up Rosedale, you can really see it. This church is in the shape of a round African hut for more Afro-centricity. The wood of the altar and the ambo. The wood of the altar and the ambo that I stand at is the ambo, and this is the altar. This wood is from West Africa. This is mostly African mahogany. It's trimmed in anagray and bubinga. These are West African woods, hardwoods, more Afrocentricity. There's an adinkra symbol that's right on the front of the altar. That means from what I hear, I keep. It's on the ambo. On top of the altar is another adinkra symbol that signifies Ganami, God is king. That's on the altar table. In front, if you look at the altar table, you'll see two intersecting circles. What does it form? A fish. Ictus. Ictus means Jesus Christ, God's Son, is the Savior. That was the ancient symbol of early Christianity, and it has been manifested throughout in the design of this church and in its church worship pieces. In front of this ambo, if you move the decoration, you'll see the same ictus. The baptismal pool, which is going to be explained more on the pamphlet, is in the shape of Gorée Island. It was a slave island off the west coast of Africa. More is going to be said. It will be said in the pamphlet. Some items from the old church. Before I close, I need to tell you a little bit more about them. On top of this church building is a cross that sits at the very top of this skylight. The skylight that's over the middle here. And that cross is a cross from the old church building. When entering the church from the parking lot, you will notice a rose window right over that entry. That's a rose, it's a circular round, again, circle. It's a circular round window from the old church. It's a rose-colored window, rose stained glass. When you enter into the foyer off the parking lot, you will walk on slate from the old church buildings, from the roofs of the old church building. And you'll see to the right and to the left of you stained glass windows from the old church building. So we kept a lot of the old. Something, as we said, to know about the past is to better yourself in the future. Right behind me is an adinkra symbol, and it's also on the baptismal font. It's called Sankofa. That's the Sankofa bird that basically reinforces what I just said. knowing your history to benefit for the future. Is to make your future more successful, you need to know your past. Further development of the church is going to continue in the building complex. You'll hear in the future about things like kitchen expansion, development of the sacred prayer garden, the addition, something near and dear to my heart, the addition of a bell tower. Older St. Mary's members remember the bells of St. Mary's ringing throughout the neighborhood. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I'll be talking to you a little bit later about that fraud, about a bell tower. In closing, I hope this presentation will aid in your understanding in sacred geometry and the strength of intersecting circles, the use of light, use of natural light, and what it means liturgically as we carry out Christ's mission. And to remember, they are just exhibits, as you see with the ictus in front of our ambo and altar, of the belief that Jesus Christ is God's Son and our Savior. Thank you.